It's Monday, and you know what that means. Jersey First TV proudly brings you the latest edition of Real Talk. And certainly, I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist, Top 50 Latino, as voted on by the United States Latino Affairs Initiative. Without a doubt, the people's choice and the people's voice. I hear it all the time, folks, being the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's quite evident when you look at it every single week. The most handsome face that runs the place. It's me, Fernando, your Uribe. Happy Monday, everyone. Hope you had a wonderful weekend. Some good weather to enjoy on Saturday. It's getting a little chilly, obviously, in November. You know, the month just flies by. Obviously, Thanksgiving is next week. But this week in Atlantic City, folks, it is the League of Municipalities. I look forward to being there tomorrow night and for the rest of the week. For all you Fernando Uribe fans, come up and say hi. For all you haters, come up and say hi as well. I look forward to seeing you all at the League of Municipalities later this week in Atlantic City. Folks, I want to thank you all for tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so right now on Facebook Live via StreamYard and also on the Jersey First YouTube page. Of course, all of our social media platforms. We appreciate you always checking it out, always sharing our content. We're most grateful for that. And folks, always remember to make sure you like us on Facebook. Of course, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Don't forget to click on the subscribe button and you'll get all the notifications of all the fresh new content brought to you by Jersey First TV every single week. And of course, whether you get your podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud, download Jersey First and take it with you anywhere and everywhere you go during the rest of 2023. Whether you're visiting that annoying mother-in-law, maybe visiting your girlfriend, boyfriend, hey, maybe you're taking your dog for a walk, maybe you're going grocery shopping, whatever it is, maybe you're doing errands. Folks, you're always on your smartphone. And since you are, take Jersey First TV with you everywhere you go. And of course, I cannot say enough, ladies and gentlemen, how proud I am to be on the dream team of Garden State Media. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. It's always Jersey First TV. Brand new episodes of the Nader Narrative, hosted by the incredible Elizabeth Nader, premiere every Thursday. And of course, also on Thursdays, you can see brand new episodes of Bridging the Gap, hosted by AJ Malillo and Stephen Rumbolo. And of course, brand new episodes Real Talk with Fernando Uribe come at you every Monday night at either 6 p.m. or 7 p.m. Eastern time. Of course, check social media and your local listings for broadcast times. And folks, again, whether it's Mondays, Thursdays, any day of the week, folks, we are educating and empowering the residents of the state of New Jersey. Nobody does it better than Jersey First TV. Check out all the great content, folks, at jerseyfirst.org/TV. Folks, you definitely want to stick around for final thoughts because I'm going to have a lot to say about the NJGOP and certainly the NJEA, two organizations that pissed me off immensely last week. And you definitely want to, get some popcorn ready, folks, because the NJGOP and the NJEA are right in my crosshairs. You definitely want to stick around for that commentary. But first, ladies and gentlemen, I have an amazing double main event tonight. We're going to focus on journalism this evening, and why not talk to two of some of the biggest names in journalism here in the state of New Jersey. First half of tonight's double main event, folks. He is the assistant director for the Center of Cooperative Media at Montclair State University. And apparently he's a big fan of the show. Folks, let's welcome in Joe Amditis here to Real Talk via Jersey First TV. Joe, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Appreciate it, Joe. And folks, again, click that share button because sharing is caring here on Jersey First TV. Joe, great stuff here. Again, looking at what the Center for Cooperative Media does at Montclair State University. We'll get to dissecting media today, but let's talk about how great of a resource the Center for Cooperative Media is on the campus of Montclair State University.
Well, thank you. Those are very, very kind words. We were formed in 2012 after a huge round of layoffs in New Jersey newsrooms across the state, and also in the wake of Hurricane Sandy, when there was a lot of chaos and confusion and just an inability to effectively share and distribute critical information that communities and residents needed. And so out of that, we were born as a sort of connecting support organization to help, various news organizations from the broadcast and radio outlets all the way down to the papers and the individual hyperlocal, especially the hyperlocal outlets in New Jersey, and just to give them a sort of a support structure and also a vehicle to collaborate and work together and share resources and just serve their communities better and as effectively as they can.
When we think about journalism, media, I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, Joe, because I think perception of the media, I mean, you can look at some polling, you can look at some think tanks that focus groups that people have a lot to say about how they perceive media. And we'll focus on that in a moment.
Not great out there.
But in the time you've been working at Montclair State, and certainly, again, the Center for Cooperative Media, I think, has done an outstanding job in helping get students prepared for a career in journalism media, which is not always easy.
It's true. And we are, to be clear, we are mostly an externally focused organization. I also teach as an adjunct at the school, but I teach multimedia production for strategic communications. But the bulk of our work at the center is actually externally focused in community media and hyperlocal entrepreneurial journalists and publishers across the state, in concert with the backing of Montclair State University as sort of home base for that kind of work.
And let's be fair. I mean, listen, next to my alma mater, Rutgers University, I mean, we talk about enrollment. We talk about, there you go. Hoorah, you know how they say, right?
On the banks of the Raritan, exactly, yeah.
One of those things where, whether it's enrollment, whether it's the size of faculty, the demand for parking, whatever. I mean, Montclair State has grown exponentially in the last 20 years to the point where, at one point it was Montclair State College. That's no longer the case. It's the second, really, I think, most populated state university in New Jersey. And I think it's really, I've taught there before. It's a great campus. Listen, I love going to Cafe Diem. Sometimes the overpriced sandwiches bother me, but you can't beat the coffee there when you're grading papers. But it's a great campus. And let's be honest, I mean, what they've been able to do with, again, getting state funding, obviously, and making sure that departments all throughout the university are funded, especially, let's say, again, the Center for Cooperative Media, journalism, the School of Journalism and Media collectively, right? I think it's a testament to how committed Montclair State is to this specific discipline. Is that fair to say?
I think so in a lot of ways. I mean, there are obviously, issues at any institution when it comes to, some of the relationships between, employees and bosses. Obviously, there's, union issues that have gone up and down throughout the years, like any college. But I think what they've been able to do in terms of securing a home for the New Jersey Civic Information Consortium has been huge. Obviously, I'm a big fan of the fact that they're keeping the center around a while, although the overwhelming majority of our funding comes from philanthropic sources and funding outside of non-public funding. It's just still great to have a home there. You're right. It also doesn't hurt to have that beautiful campus, although you will be sad to hear that Cafe Diem is no longer where you can go for coffee. There's a Panera now down in Susan Cole Hall, but no longer sitting out there. They still have the picnic tables and everything, but no. Okay. And now I think there's like a Starbucks truck parked around the corner now too. So,
well, I do remember,
right. Things have changed.
I do remember there was Starbucks coffee, I think, to some extent at University Hall. When I would walk in through the ground floor, I'd see on the left-hand side, and I'd be like, I'd have my thermos there, and I'm like, I was teaching those morning classes. It was demanding. So I got to say the coffee was amazing.
It's a different campus, but I think the commitment has remained steadfast, and hoping to see it continue to grow.
Without a doubt. Folks, it's 7:09 here on the East Coast. If you just joined us live, click that share button because sharing is caring. My guest right now is tonight's first half of the evening's double main event. He's the assistant director at the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State University. Well, that's a mouthful. He is Joe Amditis here joining us on Real Talk New Jersey First TV. Joe, let's get into today's journalism. I mean, I know we had a chance to talk on the phone this afternoon. And, one of the things that I guess maybe it's I have a chip on my shoulder, and maybe it's why I tend to be a little braggadocious, I think, about my traffic. But it's interesting because, I grew up really like everybody else. Listen, I'm an old man compared to you, as we talked on the phone. I grew up loving newspaper. I still physically read a newspaper. I'm that guy that reads the sports page first, likes to have my coffee, work my way to the front, love reading the Wall Street Journal on the weekends. But I mean, print media has basically died a slow death for well over a decade now. I mean, obviously the introduction of the internet in the last 25 years, social media too. But, I get a lot of flack, man, from my peers in the field that will say, you know what, it just aggravates me to no end when I hear Fernando call himself a journalist, because he's not. And it just seems like there's this sort of antiquated notion about, well, if you didn't go to school for journalism, if you didn't get a degree in this, if you didn't cut your teeth or roll up your sleeves and pay your dues in the business, working at a local newspaper, then you're not really a journalist. And people that are podcasters or opinion journalists like myself, they're not really journalists. And for me, you know what? That doesn't sit well with me, Joe.
I think I hear your complaints, and I've heard that across the board, whether it's the battle over digital media versus print media in the mid 2000s, early 2010s, and whether the medium is the issue. But I think it really boils down to something a little bit more core to what we think of when we hear the word journalist. And I think at our core, and I feel like also I get the same vibe when people talk about bias and the type of objectivity, is I think what people are really looking for are a set of core principles that are transparent and public, that the people who call themselves journalists are going to adhere to, through the line, regardless of what happens or regardless of their own situations. And I don't think those two things are incompatible, but I think on the end of the smaller publishers, and we see this all the time with our reporting partners who are from, one-person outlets, two-person outlets, entrepreneurs who started up because they felt a compulsion, a need to fulfill and serve the critical information needs of their local communities. But with that, there's an assumption with that word that calls back to those set of principles and processes. And when you don't have that sort of baked in institutional legitimacy, which is implied that there are all kinds of people who are double, triple checking from all different angles what you're about to put out into the world, I think that's what people are sort of in the back of their head silently assuming. And then when you don't see that, or when you see this sort of one-man operation or one-person show, it's an easy line to attack and say, unless you have your principles declared and the processes by which you abide by them, then it's easy for someone to say, you're not a journalist because you don't have those systems to back up your own thoughts and actions on whatever story you're covering.
Fair points. And again, and I appreciate you sort of breaking that down for us, because it's really interesting when I talk to my peers, and we'll get to sort of objectivity in media a little bit later, because I really want to get your thoughts on this. But again, I think that technology and the internet has created this sort of, I think, not echo chamber, but this atmosphere that it has made facilitating sort of, citizen journalism to some extent easier. Case in point, again, the internet's about 25 something years old. But when we think about social media, we think about really, 2005, the birth of Facebook, or the Facebook, right, back in the day. Certainly, we think about then YouTube premiering that same year. And then subsequently later on in the 2000s, we would see the birth of Twitter, the birth of Instagram, obviously. And then I lose track now. Snapchat, and then TikTok, and then this and that.
You forgot the OG, Tom, with MySpace.
Tom gave us everything we ever wanted.
They started it all. Okay, let's not cut them out of the history.
Tom gave us everything we wanted, and we never appreciated Tom. He's somewhere enjoying himself on an island laughing. Hey, I gave you a profile song. I gave you a top 5, and you still didn't love me. Makes you wonder, right? So Tom deserves more flowers, I think. But, we see that evolution going into the 2010s. And we started seeing, obviously, different forms of podcasting. I mean, listen, I'm a big pro wrestling fan. Podcasting was one of the more popular mediums that enabled us pro wrestling fans to learn more about the business. Same thing with whether it was YouTube, right? The Young Turks, going back to Ben Shapiro, the evolution into Joe Rogan, liberal hosts like Tom Hartman. I mean, there's been almost anybody that's everybody that's trying to do this, though, Joe, has looked at a medium like YouTube. And over the years, obviously, listen, we said it before, we went on the air. Nothing good came out of the pandemic whatsoever. We lost loved ones. We saw economies destroyed, business disrupted. But when it came to technology like this, I mean, the idea of having to be in a studio, the idea that, hey, I have to give Joe directions and he has to brave traffic on the Turnpike or Parkway or wherever, that's not the case. I'm in my home studio. You're at home. We can have this show broadcasting live to thousands of people. Thankfully, that's the traffic I produce every week. But it's amazing how technology has really shaped the way that we also deliver journalism.
Yeah, and I think the fact that people continue to find ways to report on things, deliver information, and reach communities, no matter what the platforms that are available to them at the time, speaks to the idea that the information and the transmission of it is happening. It's going to keep happening, and it's going to take different forms and shapes. But at its core, it's going to keep happening. And so as these things, as the technology changes, so do the situations and the appetites and the perspectives of the consumers of that information and the disseminators. And so it has to sort of evolve alongside each other. It does. It's inevitable that these two sort of evolve in tandem with each other, because one change without the other going along with it, or vice versa, leads to a flop, or it leads to something like Facebook just immediately going away, or any number of other booms and busts, or tech promises, or pie in the sky style ace in the hole new toy that comes out. Ultimately, the core information and the community, the sense of community, is what keeps people coming back to it, and in no matter what form it takes.
And also, too, let's also add the reality about being able to monetize this. I mean, not just people take it up as a hobby. You can monetize and you can earn income based on this. Of course, it's obviously results driven. If you're going to do that, you have to produce. And if you don't, obviously, you'll sort of just disappear like Thanos once the Iron Man snaps those fingers, as they say, right? So it's interesting about I think the way we consume media and sort of our views of journalism. And let's sort of look at that as well, because while you work in academia, Joe, and certainly I think, working in academia myself as well, it's always been very left leaning, if not sometimes maybe ultra left. And for someone like me who, I've taken my responsibilities as an academic, as an instructor seriously. I don't indoctrinate my students. You don't know what I feel on what issue or whatever. Listen, we live in a world where my students can Google me easily and watch a show and they'll know what I'm about. And that's fine. But I don't bring that into the classroom. It just seems like, especially in academia, we've seen it become so left-centric. What are you seeing with the Center for Cooperative Media, with other faculty members? Do you hear that from students where maybe faculty are sort of making their political views a little more evident than they used to be maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago?
Well, I mean, it sounds like you're saying the political views are evident. It may just be a matter of people acknowledging them and describing. I mean, because to me, if you do believe something and it is part of the ideology or the intellectual matrix or latticing that makes up your perspective, not just on the scholarship but on the work itself, and you're able to describe and explain where and how you arrived at those conclusions, the students are still left with the decision of whether or not to believe it or to call BS on you, and expose you and no longer respect your opinion because it's not a well-founded one. So I've never had any problem with describing the way I feel about something or the way something has affected me. I went to Iraq. I'm an Iraq war veteran, and that had an impact on me because I saw what happens over there firsthand. And so when I describe that in concert with the scholarship and the research that I've done at the academic side, combined with the lived experience side, I personally think that provides a much more robust and rich perspective, and arguably a more factual one because it covers from both those angles. Now, that doesn't mean that I ignore the logical, rational, defended side of how I approach things. I still have to have, again, a transparent process. Part of science, a huge part of science, is having things be repeatable, and to have a process behind that you can explain and elucidate to people. I think there's a difference between that and also just sort of acting like the perspective isn't there and moving forward with the same conclusions, but without actually explaining or articulating how you arrived at them.
Fair enough. Folks, it's 7:18 here on the East Coast. If you just joined us live right now, click that share button because sharing is caring here. My guest right now, the first half of tonight's double main event, he is the assistant director at the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State University. Joe Amditis joins us here on Real Talk. Joe, again, thank you for your service. I know we just celebrated Veterans Day weekend, and thank you for your service and certainly your dedication here. What branch of the military did you serve, sir?
I was in the New Jersey Army National Guard. I was the 2nd of 113th Infantry.
So you never had that beautiful lock of hair at one point, right? It was
this is pandemic hair and beard. Actually, I wore the high and tight for almost my entire life. I think it was 1 year in early high school when I tried. It was a skater and I had a little bit of a longer hair, but it's been high and tight my whole life until the pandemic. So
very nice. Listen, I've rocked that beard too. Sometimes it's just the maintenance, bro. It's just like,
you're not wrong.
Listen, you got a nice beard. I can grow one out fully. It's the grooming where, I can't tell you how many times I get oh my God, it's Hans Gruber on Monday night here instead of Fernando Uribe. I'm like, wait a second, Hans Gruber. I'm like, I don't know if I should be insulted or I don't know, or maybe complimentary. It's the best Christmas movie of all time, right? But anyway, folks, Joe Amditis joins us here on Real Talk. Joe, we talk about the way that media is perceived, and listen, I'm an unapologetic conservative. I'm an opinion journalist. Obviously, I'm not publishing news. I'm not reporting on that. as other journalists are. And by the way, folks, again, stick around. At the bottom of the hour, we'll have David Wildstein, the editor of the New Jersey Globe, join us to break down election 2023. So stick around for that. And also final thoughts. You don't want to miss out on that as well. But Joe, it's interesting about, the optics about media. And I always say this all the time. A lot of my classmates from grad school, we're on a group chat. We talk all the time. If we see something on New Jersey Globe or Drudge or the Young Turks or Newsmax or Fox or whatever, I get this sense, there's always this complaint about Fox News and Newsmax that are, very conservative. They don't apologize for that. And it seems like a lot of my liberal colleagues in academia or my former classmates would be like, Fox. And then, but then I just turn around and say, but wait a second, like the 90% of mainstream media leans left, if not in some cases, heavy left or crazy left. So why are we still complaining about two media outlets when there's 20 that outnumber them, Joe? I always find that fascinating.
I find that argument fascinating. I got 2 points. One, the only one, as far as I know, of those major outlets that has argued successfully in court that they are not a news organization and do not have to tell the truth to people is Fox News. So there's a special carve out. And I believe Newsmax is also was in a bunch of hot water for other informational reasons. But
sure.
The second point is that I would push back a little bit on that. I would say that the media, the media that you're talking about, the other 90%, as you say, certainly has a pro-capitalist bias, certainly has a maybe pro-liberal in many ways, pro-democratic party in a lot of ways. I don't think they have a leftist bias in so many other ways. I think you can see it in the way that they refer to things like the National Defense Authorization Bill as a must-pass military funding bill, the way that the military funding in general, the way that sails through with a nice little kiss on the forehead by most mainstream broadcast organizations, in the ways that any kind of social program immediately gets the dollar sign tag before it's described. You get must pass for military spending, and you get the X amount $1 billion spending bill for social programs. So I think in a lot of ways, also you mentioned, it's funny, you mentioned at the top of your show that you're a weapon of mass disruption, right? And if we remember where that phrase comes from, it's the weapons of mass destruction from the Iraq War. And the media, as you refer to them, pretty much gave the golden seal from the get-go for the invasion of Iraq. In fact, the New York Times still struggles, let's just say, to grapple with their role in the death of 1 million Iraqis. So
that's a good word. That's a good word. Struggle is a good word.
Let's call it that. I'm being kind. So, myself, literally, I'm the product of that kind of propaganda coming straight from the military-industrial complex, hardly a left-wing bias. And I went over and participated in a war that killed 1 million people or more in a country that never attacked us. So the idea that the media bias is leftist, I push back on. Pro-sensation, pro-profit, pro-capitalism, sure. Pro-leftist, pro-communist, certainly not. Well, in fact, the New York Times editorial chief himself says we are a pro-capitalist publication. So I'll leave it there. But yeah,
fair enough. You're right. Let me reword it. Not leftist. I would say heavy liberal, progressive, and even that, and even those words, those terms mean different things to different people. Case in point. To the example you just gave, and it made me think about your Instagram. I saw one of your Instagram stories, and you hit it on the head, though. You're right. I think when it comes to social programs, for example, and listen, I'm as staunch a fiscal conservative as there is. Sure. But when it comes to say certain social issues, or I'm a big policy nerd, I'm with you about, hey, we shall have healthcare. Again, a healthier population is less of a burden on our hospitals. It's less of a burden on our families.
Companies don't have to pay their workers health premiums.
Exactly.
It's a win-win,
The idea, if you procreate, the idea of having some element of childcare, I can get with that. But like anything else, I think the way we conceptualize progressive and liberal or centrist or conservative, I think really is up to debate. It's really subjective. But I know the example you just gave right now. I'm like, I saw that earlier today. So that was a good one. I got to give you props on that. Let me ask you this, though, Joe, because it's interesting to me that I look at, again, as we talk about the evolution of media. And one of the things that I think we saw during the discussion about the writer's strike in Hollywood and technology, it seems like artificial intelligence, there's a big concern about that. And I know that, for example, you look at social media and how people can use AI to manipulate algorithms, to manipulate content, the idea that hey, something doesn't have to be fact checked per se. And if you're using AI, you can just publish something out there. Now, again, there's always this concern about shadow banning and whether or not, your content is knocked down on the news feed. It's happened to me. I've been shadow banned. I know that for a fact. But how much is the concern for AI? Is it overblown or is it really legitimate?
I think that the concern is misplaced, not necessarily overblown. Like, are we going to? Is it going to make it any more easy to scam, grandmas and grandpas? Yes, it's going to make it easier to scam grandmas and grandpas with AI generated voices on the phone, sounding like your grandson. Yes, it's going to make bots more insufferable. I mean, you can't post anything anywhere these days without getting a million bot replies or bot likes. You get them on the phone, you get the text messages. It's already at a breaking point. And so, yes, this is just going to flood the market with more trash. But I think the idea of most of what we're talking about when we say AI, especially as this term is sort of lost all meaning, is simple, in most cases, simple algorithms or if this, then that automations. All of those things are plenty of ingredients to make a recipe of chaos and misinformation and all that kind of stuff. I think that our media literacy is very behind, and I don't mean media literacy in the sense of like mainstream media has lost control of the narrative and now they're blaming the readers for being too stupid to understand the nuance. I mean it like the ability to spot a fake video online, the ability to know what the artifacts of photoshopping look like, or the ability to identify certain tweaks in audio that indicate loops or superposition and transposition. That kind of media and tech literacy is still lacking. I think on both ends, both in the older generation and in a lot of the younger generation who have experienced media in a similar way to the way that someone who buys a car now and pops the hood and tries to fix their vehicle would experience it in the 70s and the 80s when you could climb inside of that sucker and get a wrench and start going. The tools have been sealed off and put into black boxes with 5 buttons on them. And that in turn has had us sort of lose relationship with the how of our technology and how it works. And so effectively, and what is, science that can't be understood, how is that any different from magic in the, in the first place? But I think it's evolved to this sort of magical feeling that anything that sort of seems to operate on a variety of inputs is, deemed AI. And at that point, it really doesn't matter because they already have all the technological power. The companies that run these things and launch them, they're going to do the same thing with it, which is to exploit and to extract, as much value and as money as they can from us.
And unfortunately, that's what some elements of media have become, right? I mean, it's feast or famine. It's profit or poverty, as they say, when it comes to getting a message out there. And, whether it's the biggest of corporations or, to your point before, small business or entrepreneurial type of website that's trying to produce news. Right. And I always find it fascinating that, again, for someone like myself working with Jersey First TV for 2 years now, you look at these operations and how it's become, really, again, with hard work, a little bit of luck. I mean, you have to get the right talent on the air, as they say. And I'm blessed to work with great people.
Welcome.
And AJ Malillo and Stephen Rombolo. I mean, it's interesting when you look at these operations per se, it really becomes, I think, almost inspirational to others to say, hey, maybe I can do this. Maybe I get a little capital here, get the right people, working under this apparatus or this, this umbrella, and I too can produce news. Having said that, I think that there's a profound difference. For example, again, folks, stick around. At the bottom of the hour, in just a few minutes, we'll have David Wildstein, the esteemed editor of the New Jersey Globe, on. You look at something like the New Jersey Globe, it's a news site. They're breaking news almost every minute of every day. They're publishing columns, maybe not necessarily editorials, but publishing news stories, election results, this data, that data. That's very different than, let's say, what I'm doing, obviously opinion journalism, getting guests on every week, trying to engage in stimulating dialogue and conversation, and trying to keep viewers engaged, but also entertained. I think it's a challenge overall where, listen, just like traditional journalism has its challenges to keep readers, I think this forum is also challenging for myself and others that are trying to keep engagement as well, because that's not always easy, Joe.
No, I agree. And I want to touch on your first point, because that sense of community and asking questions and, seeing other people, seeing examples, and really just knowing that there's other people in similar situations trying to make it and trying to solve these same problems, even if they don't have all the answers, is time and time again what we hear from the new partners and members of the New Jersey News Commons, which is our network of about 250 news organizations, small and large, in New Jersey. And over again, they say, God, it's just nice to know that like other people are struggling with this stuff, or, grappling with it in some ways. And yeah, the second part is, it is tough, and there are a lot of institutional barriers. But also, like, I noticed, when you say opinion journalism, there's an attachment to that word as journalism. And I think that blurring of that distinction, not by you necessarily, but just in general, the overlap between opinion and what is so-called straight news, is that difference in process, I think, in what the rigors of making a story from start to end, and who is involved in that process, I think is a big part of where some people, sort of recoil at calling at calling certain things journalism, and they want to reserve that word for a specific set of procedures or whatever that they feel, or their class feels is appropriate. And I think that they're wrong in many areas, and they're also not a monolith. This is very general. I think some people take that too far, and some people apply it in weird situations, like just because you're not publishing on paper, you can't be eligible for a certain awards.
Yeah.
But then I also do think that there is some gatekeeping that does need to be done, but it needs to be done in a way that doesn't freeze out people who still are filling a necessary role in providing critical information to a community, as many of the people in the class that you're talking about often do in many, many ways. And so it's tough, because that criteria gets so insanely weirdly applied, and it often tends to line up with certain interests, powered and moneyed interests in certain industries who choose to apply it over here, but then let it slide elsewhere.
Absolutely. And I think another challenge too, Joe, and again, I'm not sure if you've discussed this with your students, when it comes to, let's say, the usage of social media. I mean, we've seen also what's happened. Social media rules have changed dramatically. I can tell you, one thing about Facebook, when you look at Facebook memories and I look at posts that from, let's say, 5-10 years ago, I'm amazed at what I got away with saying 5-10 years ago. And not vulgar or anything. I mean, it was still polarizing to some extent, but the notion of fact checking, and I think that's also a term that really has come under a lot of scrutiny, I think, in recent years, whether it's through Facebook, whether it's news apparatuses in general, where fact checking is now become the norm. I mean, the idea that, listen, I remember looking at what I would post 5 years ago, 10 years ago, never got me suspended. But it was really interesting. The first time I got suspended was pretty much during 2020, during that election cycle. And then in 2021, 2022, I don't have enough fingers and toes to name the amount of times I got suspended on Facebook, either for a day or two, a week, even a month. And I'm thinking to myself, wait a second, I used to say some crazy stuff back in the day, not like bombastic or nothing bigoted or inflammatory, but I'm like, wait a minute, I got away with this before. And now Facebook, Instagram, Twitter are being a lot more punitive on people. And I get it. We don't want anything hateful whatsoever online. I get that. Or anything bigoted or discriminatory whatsoever. I just look at how I think it's been filtered differently in the last 4 or 5 years. And also the fact checking, I think, has also become like, we can't put the genie back in the bottle, but by the same token, I think people kind of maybe sometimes feel like they're walking on eggshells on social media. Do you hear that from students sometimes?
I think, I mean, maybe, I guess, I think a lot of the students are pretty much adapted to the way that these platforms behave in a way that, some people aren't. But also, like, I think we need to distinguish between and differentiate between, social media companies and journalism, publications and platforms. And the truth is, those things wouldn't have come out 5-10 years ago or whatever, because if you were publishing them on behalf of a newsroom, because of those exact kind of fact checking and processes and the rigorous procedures that a fact or a piece of copy has to go through, and the number of hands that have to touch it and eyes that have to review it before it even makes it to that point. And so, yes, if newsrooms or if social media companies applied the same standards of verification to the information that its users were allowed to put out as newspapers do to their employees and their journalists, then there would be very few, many fewer posts on social media. But I just think it's important to keep that distinction, because journalism is increasingly confused with, social media and distribution. And in fact, that's when people get asked that stupid question on every survey, where do you get your news? And they say social media, as if that's like, where do you get your news? From my phone, from the technology that delivers it to me or allows me to search it out. It further blurs the line between these entertainment and data mining, honestly, companies and journalism organizations and reporters. And so it sucks to see that, because that's already so far done at this point that it's going to be so hard to claw it back. And it's just almost second nature to just merge the two together and act like they're held to the same set of standards.
Interesting. Absolutely. Folks, we're about to wrap up shortly here with Assistant Director for the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State University, Joe Amditis here. Folks, stick around. The second half of tonight's double main event, New Jersey Globe editor David Boston will join us in a few moments. Stick around for that. Joe, real quick, I know you mentioned before you served in the National Guard, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I know we talked on the phone earlier this afternoon. I know you grew up in a relatively conservative household. Coming back from war, you're not the first veteran I've heard and talked to that being at war, going overseas to Iraq, and what happened in Afghanistan has certainly changed the perspective of a lot of soldiers coming back. Again, to your point about growing up in a conservative household, that sometimes changes you a little bit. Not makes you jaded, but changes you a little bit to where maybe your political ideologies have changed. Do you find yourself being that a little bit? Maybe growing up in a conservative household, maybe now you're more centrist, or maybe you're a little more liberal, or
I'm full on lefties. I'm a card carrying leftist, if you will. But
okay.
I do think it does, and I think more effectively what it's done is shown me just. I think the biggest issue is like people aren't speaking the same language because they don't have a lot of the same rhetorical references and rhetorical approaches. There are so many things that leftists and conservatives would agree on. We've hit on several of them tonight. I think we come at them from different perspectives sometimes. And then there's a million scholars out there that write the, bridging the, going across the aisle book or whatever. And I'm not necessarily saying that when two sides fundamentally disagree on something like a basic human dignity or the value of whatever. I'm not saying you should just have a little bit of genocide to compromise, but I'm just saying there's a way that certain in-groups talk about the things that they believe in within other members of the group. And a lot of times what I see the same arguments being made in different circles. Sure. And those two circles think that the other circle doesn't understand what they're talking about. In reality, they lose them right off the bat with the type of language that's so intrinsic to those in-groups that it immediately turns off people who aren't already part of that group and makes them feel ostracized and diminished and ridiculed because they're not in on an inside joke. And every kid growing up, every person knows how devastating it is to be made to feel like you are on the outside and not one of the cool kids, or you don't get it. You know what I mean? And I think that's a huge part of it. It's not all of it, but I think that's a lot of what I've seen, especially as someone who has heard conversations in both of those in-groups.
Joe, any way to bring you back maybe to some sort of conservative principles maybe, or you're done? You're done.
Give me one. Reduce the military budget, smaller government overreach into our personal lives, legalization of marijuana and recreational use for adults. I mean, we agree on a lot of that kind of thing. Kids shouldn't go hungry because their parents are bums. That kind of thing. I'm a big fan of all that kind of stuff. No cruel and unusual punishment. Huge fan of that. Okay. And take care of people in this country before we go invading other countries or sending billions of dollars in weapons funding to weapons contractors.
Joe, I'm with you on that one. Certainly, listen, I think taking care of our homeless populations, it's amazing in San Francisco how there's not a homeless person on the street whatsoever when Governor Newsom wants to have President Xi.
That is a TV man born and bred, my friend. That is a TV man. He knows how to set a scene. Of course, he's going to sweep people aside, and they do that across the board. You sweep the inconvenient aside when you want to be Mr. Cool on TV, and then you put up spiked benches and call them, ergonomic or something.
Sure. Joe, real quick here. Obviously, I know you say you're leaning more liberal. Obviously, culture wars is something that has really, I think, taken center stage, especially in many forms of journalism, media. It's being talked about now more than ever. We see it during election seasons, whether it's Board of Education races. We saw it being an issue in some legislative races in New Jersey. who knows, maybe next year's during the presidential election, maybe culture wars will resurface again as a talking point. As someone who now identifies more on the liberal side, when you hear culture war discussions, where do you sit on that? Does it bother you? Do you feel it's overblown? Is it hyperbole? Where do you stand on that? I'm just curious, brother.
I see two groups talking about an issue from two different perspectives. I see one group who is talking about something that affects their material reality of everyday life. I see often multiple groups who have to have these conversations and sort of decide and defend and debate their dignity. And then I see another set of conversation that's largely driven by ideological, it's so arbitrary. It's so weird to me. And it seems the vibe is that it's a bunch of people who maybe don't understand something or are weirded out by something and decide to, and the people who fund the candidates that represent those areas decide that that's a good wedge issue, and something that has never been Googled before, something that has no search history or anything, all of a sudden becomes this massive spotlight issue for a group of people who are really not affected by it. And most of the folks, including the politicians you talk to, and it's like, the minute they meet somebody, they're like, oh, my son came out as trans, or my daughter. I mean, John McCain, I got tortured. Very principled guy, experienced something horrible, like I did in terms of experiencing something and changing your mind. But these are folks who like meet somebody of a different identity and then go, wow, you know what? I've learned a lot. Maybe I should give them the same dignity and respect that I assume that everyone should be entitled to.
Joe, fair points for sure. Before I let you go, Joe, best piece of advice you can give, that you're giving currently now to your students or any other students that maybe are aspiring to be journalists, reporters, podcasters. What's the best piece of advice you can give them tonight?
Just make stuff that you like. And there's enough people out there that you'll find people who like it as well. Make stuff that you're proud of. Do things that you're proud of. And the community will find you as much as you will find them. This notion that you have to make something that everybody likes and that everybody's okay with and everybody signs off on is a killer. It's something that it will kill dreams, because the minute everybody likes you, you're done. You're bored. There's nothing exciting left. You're not doing anything valuable if everybody is on board with it.
Well, plenty of people dislike me, so maybe I'm doing something right, I guess. As I say, Joe, Joe, I want to thank you for your time. We got to grab dinner, brother. I've enjoyed this conversation. I feel like I have you on for 2 more hours, and we still wouldn't get through everything. But I really
my mouth would dry up long before then. I've been fighting.
I really appreciate your insight here. Let's definitely grab dinners at some point in the next couple of weeks. We'll touch base and coordinate. But you've been amazing, folks. Again, as a reminder, go to montclair.edu. Check out the School of Communication and Media. Obviously, you can contact Joe there, and obviously all the information there on the School of Communication Media page. And certainly, if you're looking to get involved with the Center for Cooperative Media, contact Joe Amditis right away. Great stuff you're doing there at Montclair State, Joe. I want to listen. I thank you for your time. I think this has been a very productive conversation. Love your views. Love your outlook on the way that media has evolved. I look forward to having you back on here. And listen, I think you're a fan of the show. Maybe you weren't before, but I think you're a fan of the show now, brother. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, go for it. Yep.
I appreciate that. And folks, he's Joe Amditis, once again, the Assistant Director for the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State University. Joe, if I don't talk to you in the next couple of weeks, have a happy Thanksgiving. Hopefully we'll talk before Christmas, Festivus, Hanukkah, whatever. And we'll keep in touch here on Jersey First TV. Joe, thank you for your time, brother.
Thank you very much.
Have a good night, brother. Take care. Folks, great first half of the evening's double main event there with Joe Amditis, once again, the Assistant Director for the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State University. Folks, it's 7:41 here on the East Coast. I promised you a double main event. You're going to get that in just a moment. Also, folks, stick around for final thoughts. I have a lot to say about the NJEA and the NJGOP. Both organizations pissed me off immensely last week for different reasons, and you'll find out why a little bit later. But folks, the second half of tonight's double main event, he's a big fan of the show, and I would argue the most trusted journalist in New Jersey media. Gets you the results. I don't think he sleeps between Bruce Wayne, Batman, and my guest. I don't think any of them sleep, because he's always breaking news, getting data out there, and getting all the information that you need during any election cycle. Folks, he's my guest right now, the editor of the New Jersey Globe, my good friend, and once again, a fan of the show, surprisingly, David Wildstein joins us here on Real Talk. David, how are you?
I'm well, Fernando. How are you doing?
I appreciate Dave. You're so busy, and I appreciate you taking the time to come on this program. Again, it's sort of a reinforcement that You believe in this show and in Jersey First TV. So I'm immensely grateful to you, David.
Well, and I'm grateful. Local media, as we've talked about 1,000 times, is so incredibly important. I had a chance to listen to your previous guest, and just driving that home, that media is changing. People are getting their news from different places, and people have to reflect the fact that we don't have fax machines anymore, and we don't have newspapers.
No, we don't. And again, what you do with the New Jersey Globe, David, is amazing because you're breaking news at all times. I've had a few days to decompress, David. I know we were on in the middle last week with Joey Block, great host, right, on his own, breaking down. I've had a few days to calm down. I've been very pissed off at the NJGOP, David.
Fernando, you're never going to calm down. That's not you. You're never going to calm down. That's your secret sauce.
No, that's true, and I appreciate that. But again, I think I'm less emotional than I was last Tuesday night and Wednesday morning. I think I've had a few days to process what happened. You broke, obviously, all the results last Tuesday night and all the legislative races. We'll talk about some local races, some council races, municipal races, Board of Ed races. But, David, I got to tell you, as someone who, again, is a conservative, I was rooting for a lot of people that I interviewed in different districts in Central and South Jersey, even some in Bergen County. I got to tell you, it's easy for me to go after the NJGOP, which I have, and I will later on. But I think that there's more at play here about why these races, especially in LD11 and some others, were such a surprise, David. Let's break that down first. Let's start in LD11. Vingopal, who many people looked at as very vulnerable. That's not the case. I mean, he smoked the competition and then some.
21 points. 21 points. That is a landslide of landslides.
It really is. And again, I want to go after the NJGOP for not running a better candidate, but I would just argue that Vingopal he's an excellent fundraiser. He's very shrewd, has a very high political IQ. He knows how to get it done. He's shown he can get it done in a district that maybe changed a little bit, where maybe not as blue as it used to be, or maybe not as red as it used to be. But I got to tell you, Vingopal is not just a survivor, but I think he created a blueprint last Tuesday night about how to get it done in a climate where maybe some incumbents were vulnerable. That's not the case with him, David.
No, and he had coattails. He didn't just win big, but he brought 2 assembly seats along with him, and that gives him additional security. Look, whether you have to look at a Democrat that wins by 21 points in Monmouth County and say that this is a guy who's going places. This is a guy who's going to be on short lists for higher office down the road. And he's still early to mid 30s. I mean, that's maybe I have the age wrong. Maybe it's mid 30s, but and I still think of him. I mean, I've known of him since he was a teenage political operative. So I guess I always have this young view of him, but he as a politician, he's a mature guy who understood his own district. And for any incumbent, whether you're Democrat or Republican, you've got to know your own district. You've got to know what your district wants and where it stands and vote your district. And that's what the guy did.
No, it's, and again, from one romp in LD11, we look at the master of the get out the vote mechanism, and that's my state senator, Brian Stack, in LD33, where I live in Union City. And it's amazing because, again, Brian's not just, a friend of the family. He's also, a devoted member of Cowboy Nation, of course. But Brian's a guy that, even without an opponent, a serious one, because I don't look at the Socialist Party as anything serious as far as I'm concerned. But regardless of running unopposed, that doesn't stop my state senator from getting the vote out. Yeah. And obviously that sort of trickling down to his assembly running mates, to the county executive, to county commissioners. It's amazing how, and I say this all the time, next to the emperor and next to State President Scutari and Assembly Speaker Coughlin, I would argue, David, Brian Stack is probably the 4th most influential and powerful politician in New Jersey. I mean, am I wrong here, brother?
Well, I don't know where the rank is, but he's up there. I mean, he's chairman of the Judiciary Committee. Yeah. He's well liked by his colleagues on both sides of the aisle. Everybody admits that Brian Stack, and you know, I don't like it when people use the everybody and nobody as though there's no dissent at all. But I feel comfortable with Stack because this is a guy who's just authentic, and you can't fake what he does, standing outside in a snowstorm telling people that they need smoke detectors to keep their apartment safe, or the way he walks with this army of people behind him, or the way he never takes his foot off the gas. And I'll tell you, he had no Republican opponent. The Republican county chairman, Jose Arango, endorsed him, said, the guy's just the best. It's hard to see it any other way. And I looked at these numbers, and there were two Socialist Worker Party candidates, and those aren't phantom candidates. They may be in the minority, but the Socialist Workers Party is a thing. They had a Senate candidate and an Assembly candidate, and the Assembly candidate ran 200 something votes ahead of her running mate. Because there were even 200 socialists in the 33rd legislative district who said, well, I can't vote against Brian Stack. So he's just the real thing. I mean, Fernando, could you imagine if Brian Stack decided to scale this up and ran for governor and just went out there and told everybody in the state, here's my cell phone number, just call me directly. I mean, it would be just incredible. And look, you are his constituent, so you know this exponentially better than I do, but I've seen it when they pave a road in Union City during the day. Stack and his public works director walk the new road at night, and Stack looks at it and says, you got to fix this thing here. I don't like how this curb looks, and they got a little too much tar on the block, and you need to fix that, and it's not even here. I mean, there's just nobody who's hands-on like this guy, and it's interesting because you look at Union City and Hudson County today, and you look at the issues that Senator Menendez, former Union City mayor, is facing. It's important to remember that Stack was trained not by Menendez but by Billy Musto, and Musto was that same kind of hands-on politician that was out in the neighborhoods every night. That's what Stack does, and it's just incredible. It's awe-inspiring to watch, and in a political nerd sort of way, it's sort of nice that there's still people like that who care about the nuts and bolts operation of their city.
David, it's not just about giving out turkeys or this or that. Yeah. I mean, Brian is someone who's accessible. And he's transparent. And I would just say that because we're friends and obviously, we've worked together on campaigns. It's because he means it. I mean, again, imagine, just to your point, giving out wristbands, mailing out wristbands with your cell phone, and people wearing it. And he's very accessible. He'll get back to you within 24, 36 hours. I mean, his phone blows up all the time. Obviously, with redistricting, it changed. The district changed a little bit. Obviously, LD 33 got a little more north. It eliminated the Jersey City Heights and the downtown section that used to be permeating LD 33. So, but again, I think he's an example where he's transparent. He gets the vote out. And listen, as a Democrat, whether it's for gubernatorial races we've seen or U.S. House of Representative races, I mean, he gets the vote out. Or U.S. Senate races, he gets turnout in Union City and in LD 33. Speaking of Hudson County, I want to get your thoughts on this. I know you were one of the first people to publish this about Hoboken Mayor Ravi Bala, and he and I certainly no love lost there between us. But it's interesting where he's raised an exorbitant amount of money, though, David, in a time where he pissed off a lot of people in Hudson County because it seemed like, well, he's daring to challenge Rob Menendez, who won his race very comfortably in 2022. He hit the ground running. He too has also become very accessible as a member of the House of Representatives. But it just seems like Ravi annoyed a lot of people because they looked at it as like, well, Ravi's a little opportunistic here. His dad's vulnerable. Let me go after Junior and let me raise some money. There's a lot to unpack there, right? Because it seems like maybe Ravi had this already in his mind for some time, and now who knows? Maybe he looks at Rob as vulnerable. I don't see Rob Menendez as vulnerable at all. On the contrary, I think Rob is going to roll up his sleeves and fight for this primary.
Well, you have this whole, sins of the father thing going on here that is undoubtedly true. Rob Menendez is not his father. He's his own man and is a smart guy, good guy. But it's also it's also fair to look at the ease by which Rob Menendez got to Congress in the first place. I'm just one of these people who believes that have an election. Don't push people out of the race. Let 2 or 3 or whatever number of candidates, let them present themselves to the people and let the voters decide who they want based upon the merits of a race. I don't think it'd be so terrible for Rob Menendez to have a challenge this year from Ravi Bala or whoever. And by the way, that fundraising number that Bala put up is impressive, and it ought to be daunting. And I've written about Congressman Menendez sort of taking the foot off the gas when it came to fundraising for the first 9 months. He, as an incumbent, shouldn't be playing catch up. Now he is. He's got a record to run on. I don't necessarily think that record is out of step at all with the people of his district. So he's going to have to convince people that he merits election in his own right, because it's no longer convenient to be Bob Menendez's son. And this is going to be really, really interesting to people, is to see whether voters can differentiate the two. He's got a name associated with a guy who's got an 8% approval rating. He's got a name of a guy who's been around for decades, who now 71% of Hispanic voters, according to the Fairleigh Dickinson University poll, think he should resign. Those are devastating numbers to a guy like Senator Menendez. So Congressman Menendez is going to have to say, got the same name, he's my father, but I, don't hold me accountable for the allegations against my father. And I think that's going to be it's going to be a good race to watch.
No, it is. And again, to your point, David, Rob has his record. He's going to run on that. Yeah. And it's a district that's, kind of blue collar, working class Democrat. It's not like, as I like to make reference to, the Puerto Rican princess across the river in New York with AOC. That's not Rob. Rob isn't that. Rob isn't that woke Democrat that, subscribes to all that nonsense. I mean, Rob is, again, part of that district. And again, it's a district that's predominantly Hispanic. And I just think that, David, again, this is my own, I'm trying not to let my bias overcome me here, but, Robbie's act plays well in Hoboken, a lot of the woke stuff and all this other nonsense that he likes to, champion in Hoboken. I don't know if that resonates in the 8th Congressional District.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, and again, this is your home turf, so I wouldn't even dare compete with Fernando Uribe on North Hudson stuff. But Hoboken's not like Union City or West New York or North Bergen or the North Ward of Newark or Elizabeth. And these are places where that organization line matters a lot. But you've got a financial edge right now with Bala, and the cloud over Congressman Menendez is unfortunate for him. And there's we have to all say it over and over. There are 0 allegations against Robert J. Menendez. Nobody's ever said he's done anything wrong, but it's a tough name to have on the ballot. And I don't know what you do about that, but it's also fair for Ravi Bala and others to say, look, you got there because of your name, and you're going to have to now. Now's the point where you have to win an election, and I do this once in a while. Where I just go political nerd on people, and I apologize in advance, but I think back to the 1962 Democratic primary for U.S. Senate in Massachusetts. It was an open seat because the previous Senator, John F. Kennedy, had been elected president of the United States. And the family wanted to continue that dynasty. They wanted Ted Kennedy to get the seat. Now, when JFK was elected, Ted Kennedy was only 29. He couldn't be appointed to the Senate. So they put a family friend, the guy named Ben Smith, into the seat until Ted Kennedy was old enough to run. And he didn't get a free pass. The Attorney General of Massachusetts, a guy named Eddie McCormick, whose uncle was the Speaker of the House of the U.S. House of Representatives, no slouch. He said, "Well, I've got a real record. I don't want to, Teddy's not going to get anointed without having to pass through me first." And he ran in the primary. And one of the things, and I was, I'm not that old, so I didn't watch this debate, but I've read about it. And one of the things that McCormick said to Kennedy is, "You're only in this race because your name is Edward Moore Kennedy. And if your name was Edward Moore, your candidacy would be a joke." And as we look at, we live in a state, or you live in a state. I used to live in a state where legacies are important and dynasties are important, and whether it's the Canes or the Paynes or the Norcrosses or the Menendezes or any number of people, you're about to have on Wednesday the First Lady of New Jersey, Tammy Murphy, get into the race for the U.S. Senate. New Jersey is a state where you get these political legacies from time to time, but they have to be prepared to win real campaigns.
David, great segue there. I was just about to mention, since you mentioned Rob Jr., I want to mention his dad, obviously. No word yet from his father about whether or not he's going to run in the primary for next June.
No.
That certainly has not stopped U.S. Representative Andy Kim from announcing good fundraising tools, again, as reported by you at the New Jersey Globe. David, again, this is where the opinion journalist comes out in me. I find this potential coronation with Tammy Murphy disgusting. I think it's sickening. I feel nauseous just talking about it, David. And I think that, whether or not we're hearing George Norcross maybe giving it a blessing, we hear that State Senator Dick Cody also perhaps will be giving a blessing to maybe some county lines. David, I mean, you're great at being objective, and this is why I love having you on this show. But David, this is disgusting. My God, this can't happen, David. Come on.
You know what? I don't think that Tammy Murphy is going to be anointed. I don't think this is going to be a coronation. I have watched Andy Kim in 3 campaigns, and he's the nicest guy in the world. But boy, he knows how to run a tough campaign when he has to. He's going to be well funded. He raised $1 million in his first week. I think this primary is going to be something to watch, and I think that the First Lady is going to have to win this on her own merits. She's not going to be able to coast. She's going to have to run a good campaign. She's going to have to talk about who she is.
David, she might get a lot of county lines, though, right?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry.
No, she might get a lot of county lines, which to me is also upsetting. But
sure. But if there's ever, this is 2020. This is primary 2024. So as where 2023 was the off year election, the year, the time in the 4-year cycle where turnout is at its lowest. Presidential races are where you get the 1 out of 4 voters. And even if New Jersey is not relevant in the presidential election, people like to vote in presidential primaries. So you're going to have a pool of new voters. When I say new voters, I don't mean just young voters. I mean voters who don't really show up in the other 3 out of 4 years. They're going to come out and vote, and they're going to be less influenced. So if there's ever going to be a year where the organization lines don't hold, it'll be in a year like 2024, where the turnout is huge, and you have a legitimate off the line candidate in Andy Kim. I don't know, there'll be some lines. He'll get Burlington. Tammy Murphy's going to have to compete with him at conventions, which could go either way, which is in Monmouth, in Mercer, in Hunterdon, in Morris. Those are places where where party leaders don't dictate it and actual county committee members will make their own decisions. So Tammy Murphy's never run for office before. I happen to think she's a good candidate. And I've seen her up close, and she's good on her feet. She is probably one of the best Democratic fundraisers I've ever seen, which means she's going to have a lot of money, and she's got I think it's fair to give her credit for certain accomplishments on like maternal and infant health. I think she will impress a lot of people, but Andy Kim undeniably strong. And again, Fernando, this is how it's supposed to be. Whether it's on the Democratic side or the Republican side, pick some good people, let them actually run in this thing that's called elections that everybody seems to be so frightened of. Let's cut this off before the voters actually vote. Let's go at it. Primaries are great. Primaries are wonderful. And so let two people, they may not even have, hugely different opinions on major issues, but they're different personalities. Let them go before the voters, and let them compete and let them both be heard, especially when you have a guy who can probably raise enough to keep himself competitive. I think he will. Let's do it. Let's have this primary. And one of the weaknesses, and look, part of it is selfishness. I admit it. Competitive primaries are good for me, right? I mean, it gives me more to cover. It gives you more to talk about. But there's a very real point here, which is stop clearing the fields and let voters vote. It's not so frightening to have an election.
No, fair enough, David. Absolutely. David, let me ask you this, because obviously I think it was announced. I know you were one of the first people to break the story that I believe Senator Menendez's trial should be starting in May of next year, which is about a month before the primary. What are you hearing about Senator Menendez? Does he want to run again? Because could he postpone it? I mean, could he get an adjournment and maybe focus on running? What are you hearing, David?
Well, first of all, I don't want to take credit for that because, I wrote it because it was on the court docket and the judge decided it. So it was, it's public information. Sometimes I type faster than other people. That doesn't, there's things I want to take credit for, but I can't take credit for something that everybody else has had. I've known Bob Menendez for nearly 40 years. Certainly 35. And we were young mayors together back in the 80s. I was the deputy clerk of the assembly and he was a freshman assemblyman. So I've watched him very closely. I've watched him, how he comes about making decisions. This is a guy who runs to fights and doesn't run away from them.
Yeah.
And I think what he was, if one of the things I wrote about on Friday night is Andy Kim did his kickoff and Menendez took a shot and basically said, Andy Kim's nowhere near as an effective a legislator as I am. And Dick Cody, Governor Cody, took a shot at him in endorsing Tammy Murphy, and Menendez went right back and punched him in the face. I think what you're seeing is Menendez is signaling that he's going to fight, whether he runs or not. There's a lot of stuff here that I don't know. And legal, I have no idea about his legal strategy, about what his lawyer is telling him, whether, when they want this trial to happen. There's no way this trial is going to happen before people are actually voting in the primary. Unfortunately for Senator Menendez, he's not going to be the nominee of his party. His Senate career is coming to an end, and Fernando, I think I know him well enough to know that he knows this. He is a smart guy, but he's got to think about what his next steps are, what puts him in the best light, what plans for his future. I'll tell you one thing that I think might be really interesting. If Bob Menendez feels that he has been mistreated by the party that he has served and been loyal to for his entire political career. I never want to go up against in any election. You don't ever want to let a caged, because this is probably going to be the wrong thing to say, but I'll just say it, because we're on Real Talk. So I'll say it. I'll say it in the real way. You don't ever want to run against a caged animal who has just been let out of the cage, because that person is going to come after you with the type of vengeance that you've never seen. So I have no way of knowing this. I don't know if it's even possible, but you've got to think about the possibility of what if Menendez with his $8 million, I can't win a primary. That's not possible. But I don't like how my party has just abandoned me and left me out there with, swimming in the water with no life preserver at all. So screw them. I'm going to run as an independent. And I take my $8 million and I will appeal to people who may not like the winner of that primary. And all Menendez has to do is win 15% of the vote. And you're suddenly talking about New Jersey's U.S. Senate seat being in play. That, suddenly you're talking about Christine Serrano Glassner being, very much in the race. And you've got to wonder if New Jersey's Senate seat is suddenly up for grabs, the Democrats are worried about keeping that Senate, then all of a sudden Chuck Schumer is going to start talking to people and say, what are you doing? It's time for a deal for Bob Menendez. I don't know. I have no inside information at all. And I can tell you, Fernando, having been through this sort of myself, it is what it is. I was part of a scandal where the guy who really should have been in trouble is now running for president of the United States, because we live in sort of a bizarro world. But I've been there, and I know that there are things happening. People try and pretend like they're in the know, and they're really not. And I don't know what's going on with Bob Menendez right now, but I can tell you that I don't think there's any chance in the world that he's going to be in the United States Senate come January 2025. But I also don't think there's any chance in the world Bob Menendez is going to allow people to just push him around without fighting back a little bit.
David, I'm Cuban just like him. You don't pick fights with us. You just don't, because we fight back. That's for certain. Yeah. David, let's get back to some state races. I really want to pick your brain on this because, I've let it sort of, I've calmed down since last Tuesday night and Wednesday morning. And, I wanted to scorch the earth with the NJGOP and its chairman, Bob Hughes. And I'm still upset because I think there were a lot of winnable races. And I understand that sometimes the messaging might not be the best. But I just think at times the NJGOP, it just has a self-defeatist mentality. Case in point, and you can correct me because I know you're up to date on the numbers, but it just seems like there were plenty of candidates that the NJGOP did not help. Case in point, I think it was LD38. I'd interviewed Micheline Ate. She lost by 3 points. And I know for a fact that the NJGOP
actually, Fernando, I'm going to correct this because there are problems with the Bergen County Clerk's website. Joe Logano won by 15 points.
15. Okay.
Clobbered her.
Okay. Again,
it's just, and by the way, and I'll go off on a very quick tangent if you indulge me. This is the problem. There's no shenanigans in Bergen County. Nobody's stealing votes in Bergen County. You don't have voter fraud in Paramus or Fairlawn or Bergenfield or Lodi. But when numbers are posted to the public and they're incorrect, it fuels people's speculation that something funny is going on. And that's why it's so important for election officials to get it right, immediately out of the box and be transparent with the numbers, because it makes people think something's going on. But at the end of the day, that was not a winnable race. And Joe Logano had that one probably by 10 o'clock. It's just that the real numbers didn't show that.
Fair enough. And again, I'm glad you corrected that on the air here tonight, because again, to that point, I looked at a lot of different totals. I said, these are races and maybe some Republicans could have won. And again, there was a lot of sort of, you use the NFL term, the win was to allow Republicans back. Like in the culture war discussion over the summer, the fall. I know I talked to a lot of operatives statewide that said privately a lot of Democrats, even Governor Murphy, was a little nervous. Like, oh wow, okay, there's some vulnerable Democrats. That wasn't the case, and it kind of makes me wonder, though, David, moving forward, where I think there needs to be some accountability with the NJGOP and its chairman, because listen, maybe on a local level, there's for example, like townships like Paramus and Bergen County, Board of Ed races, but legislatively, David, Republicans have none to brag about. And they lost 5 assembly seats. They lost the LD3 last week, which I thought that maybe Ed Durr could squeak by. That wasn't the case. And I just think that Republicans on a state level have still not embraced vote by mail or early voting. And they keep doing that to their own peril. They're not going to win any more races anytime soon. And I think this is where the NJGOP needs to have a come to Jesus moment and say, wait a minute, what's Bob Hugin doing? Again, I'm not trying to pick on Bob per se, but there needs to be some accountability here. Like, you can't just brag about 2022 where you only flip one congressional district. This year, you lost 5 assembly seats, maybe more, depending on some results I know that you're reporting on as well.
Yeah, I think it's going to be 6. Yeah.
They lost the Senate seat. I mean, Republicans at a state level have none to brag about. So it kind of makes me question, though, David, is it messaging? Is it, again, not embracing BBMs, early voting? Republicans are taking a shellacking, and as a conservative, I'm just disgusted, David.
Yeah, and there's a lot of things in play here, and let me, if I could break it down, sort of piece by piece,
please.
So start with the map. The map is a great map. It was the very best that Republicans could have hoped for, because it gave Republicans a path. There were enough districts that were theoretically winnable. The last 2 maps, it didn't matter if Republicans did everything right. They were going to get screwed on the map, and they weren't screwed on the map. And that's just how it was. So the map wasn't the problem. Then you get to, what's your next level? Candidate recruitment, I think, was an epic fail. I'm not saying they were bad people.
Sure.
I'm not saying that they wouldn't, some of these candidates, Micheline Attier, good example. She should run for council in Paramus and work her way up, but she wasn't ready for the Senate seat, and she didn't have her own ability to raise money. And it's very easy for people to file a petition. You've got to be able to raise money. So candidate recruitment, Republicans did badly. That wasn't Bob Hugin's fault. That is county organization by county organization that didn't come up with their very best possible candidates to run in these districts. Money was a huge problem, and there, it's a question of the individual legislative candidates. It's also the state party. They couldn't compete with the kind of money that the Democrats had to play in some of these races. And the third thing or the fourth thing is the issues. And I sort of wonder, we're going to have to see when all these results are done, whether there were so many things out there that look, the list. You've been reciting the list for 6 months, whether, from the Republican standpoint, that I'm not taking sides on any of it, but there were some legitimate issues, whether it was sex education, forced curriculum at lower grades that had parents upset, whether it was gender identification, whether it's offshore wind and the death of whales and other marine mammals, mandating gas stoves, whether it's Phil Murphy or Joe Biden or any number of things. I'm sort of wondering whether Republicans were chasing so many shiny objects that they never got that message right. And so you have candidates that are not your very best, not bad people, but not the best that you could have gotten, with without the money to mount campaigns in winnable races, and without the message discipline. And I'll just throw something out there. I don't know if I'm right. I'm no, it's not, it's one of the things you've got to be able to say, in politics. One of the things you have to, the real talk here is that you sometimes have to say, I don't know. I don't know what caused each of these races to go. I do know that Republicans lost them all. And I'm going to say, that the number one reason, whether people like vote by mail or not, whether they like early voting or not, it's there, it's real, it's legal, and Democrats banked so many votes in advance of election day that Republicans could not bounce back from that. You have some races where the votes that were cast in advance outdid the margin of victory. And that part of it, until Republicans get their act together and stop bitching and moaning and complaining about, I don't like vote by mail, and just say, this is how it is. My dad's upset that the fax machine isn't around anymore. He likes the fax machine. It's easier for him to pull a fax off a piece of equipment than it is to start moving around and downloading a PDF and putting it up on his screen. The world is changing. Vote by mail is here. It's not going away. And you're crazy. People are crazy to not see this and fight and say, okay, I have to use every tool available in my toolbox. The other one, and I know I'm going off on a little bit of a rant, and I apologize. But the other thing is I want to point out some places where, it's got to make you wonder, what were some people missing here? Look at some off the charts, crazy, unexpected Republican victories at local levels in blue towns like Milburn and Summit, Westfield, maybe a seat in Cranford, a win for the progressives. It's certainly a tough race in West Windsor. These were all development issues. These were and maybe that's an issue that everybody missed in this campaign is people are really concerned about overdevelopment in the state.
David, let me ask you this, though. Do you think at the local level, some of the culture war issues and also the Board of Ed races, do you think maybe that resonated better and that's where maybe Republicans fared better because of that? Or is it, to your point again, overdevelopment? Or do culture wars maybe play a little bit of a factor?
No, and I don't think it was culture wars in Milburn. I mean, Milburn's a town that that Tom Malinowski won in 2018 with 75% of the vote. That was a wave election, but Mikey Sherrill, Joe DiVincenzo, they were in the 60% range. Republican local candidates won by a 2-1 margin. Okay. Westfield, blue town, Summit, blue town. What they did there is they came up with quality candidates. They were able to raise enough money to fund their race, and they had local issues on their side. Local issues, not state issues, not federal, not global. And I think that was a big part of it. Your audience is not going to like me saying that. Doesn't mean that it's not a valid observation. And that is one of the things that I kept getting from people on the culture wars is it made voters feel a little uncomfortable, and it's not a fun thing to talk about. And and maybe the hammering on those issues caused some voters to tune out before they should have. And legislative races are hard to poll. Polls have been off more frequently than ever before in the history of public opinion polling. Some of the very best candidates, whether it was, you think Brian Stack is sitting there relying on the poll
No.
saying, I mean, he is, the best candidates, they go with their gut and
Yeah.
they say, this is what's going to work in these communities. And, you get guys like Vince Palestina in the Atlantic County District. I mean, Mike Testa in Cumberland, these are people that are winning in districts that are no better for Republicans, maybe even a little bit more Democratic than some of the places Republicans were losing. And that's because they figured out the local politics of their race.
Folks, it's 8:24 here on the East Coast. We're going a little bit of overtime here. It's great to have David Wildstein, the editor of the New Jersey Globe, on with us here during the second half of tonight's double main event here on Real Talk via Jersey First TV. Again, we're wrapping up shortly here. I know David's very busy. David, I'm not sure if you have this official number in yet, but any official data about turnout? What was the state turnout, and then Republican turnout, Democrat turnout? Any numbers even close to being finalized?
No, not yet. And the reason I don't look at it yet is because these numbers are changing so frequently that, to start entering them all in, and then they're going to change today, and to close the business today was the last day for vote by mail ballots postmarked by 8 p.m. on election day to come in. Still got provisionals to work through, but what it's looking like is this, again, you can thank vote by mail and early voting for this, better off year election numbers than you had in 2019 or 2015 or 2011 or 07 or 03 or 99. I could keep going back. These numbers were better than usual, and the margin, that difference between what you usually have and who is new in voting, that was for the Democrats. I will, before you rate, because Fernando, you have a tell sign. I don't know if anybody's told you that, but when I see the pencil come up in your hand, I know it's time to just sort of wind things down. So I hope
I just wanted.
No, you haven't done it yet. You haven't done it yet. But
I just want to get a couple more questions.
Now you dropped the pencil just to make me look bad. That's all right.
No. I have a couple more questions. I know you're very busy.
I'll just let me, if I can say one more point here, which is Democrats did a great job changing their own luck in districts that we thought should have been played by Republicans. So if you look at the South Jersey districts 3 and 4, I think one of the things that will come out of this is about 30% of the Democrats who voted early, voted in advance, which is vote by mail plus in-person early voting. 30% of those Democrats were people that should not have been normally voting in an off year election. But Democrats went out, they did the legwork. They spent over a year on it, convincing federal election year voters to sign up to automatically receive their vote by mail ballot. So once you got that ballot into a Democratic household, you change the look of the electorate. You got people that would normally not vote in a legislative election, you got them to vote. And at the end of the day, I think that's one of the things going to make a difference. And look, you and I could come back. We could do 2 hours on Lakewood in the 30th district and Avi Schnall's taking of his seat in what is arguably the most Republican district in the state. So when you've got Republicans losing their very best district, losing one seat, and this was not a situation where the R's came close in some places and it just didn't break their way. None of these races, districts 3, 3 assembly was close. And Senate was reasonably close, but 4 wasn't, and 11 wasn't, and 14 was not. Neither was 16. Neither was 38. And when you're getting beaten by double digits in places where Republicans have a path to victory, it's probably time for the Republican Party to really take a look at how they're doing things.
Absolutely. David, quick thing here. Let's have a chuckle. I, for the life of me, cannot understand. And I get that people's disposable income, it varies by household, by salary, wage, whatever. Can you please explain to me, David, who in their right mind is donating even $1 to Christopher? How is this guy still on the debate stage and raising money? Listen, short of, again, he's a fellow Cowboys fan. That's probably the only redeeming thing I can think of when it comes to the former buddy. But God, David, who in their right mind is giving money to Christopher? I don't understand how he's still in this race, David. Please break it down, brother.
So you're a historian too. When did snake oil salesmen start becoming successful? What P.T. Barnum, there's a sucker born every minute.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of uninformed voters out there. There's, people are giving him money, and I don't get it. It's hard for me to believe that he's still standing on that stage. But also, Fernando, this, numbers don't lie. And Christopher may be getting enough money in to qualify for the debates, and he's loud and he's boisterous, but there's no indication at all that Republican primary voters are going to actually vote for him. And God bless him. My late friend Bob Franks, one of the smartest grassroots politicians I'd ever seen, just a brilliant guy. He used to look at people in a meeting and they'd be talking about their tactics, and he'd say, "Okay, that's fine, but how are you going to get some of those things called votes? Because without actual votes, it doesn't matter." So Christopher is going to be, he's going to be toast once the New Hampshire primary comes. I'll tell you what ought to concern Republicans in New Jersey who know him best is who is the next person, the grifter of all grifters, the grifter in chief, is going to latch onto that's going to bring him into their inner circle and maybe allow him to continue to have a place. I don't get it. And I am, it is what it is. I drank his Kool-Aid for a few years. And I look back and I think, how was I possibly that stupid, that dumb to buy his, can I say bullshit on Real Talk with Fernando Uribe? I don't know how I was dumb, and it is embarrassing and humiliating and mortifying to me that I was dumb enough to buy Chris Christie's bullshit, but I did. So I worry that other people might too.
David, before I let you go real quick, your political IQ is as good as anybody, if not the best in the state. Let me pose this theory
to you.
Have
to be better than David Cruz, right? Or Tom Moran. I don't. Please. How's this? Now I'm just trying to really get your juices going. I'm playing, I'm like a toreador, with the red cape in front of Fernando. I've now taken Fernando Uribe's jacket and I'm waving it in front of him by using names like David Cruz and Tom Moran. And by the way, the dumbest of all is not Cruz and Moran. It's Mike Kelly of the Bergen Record. But I don't have to be all that good. There's this old expression in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. I only have to be better than those fools.
Well, let me tell you, so the Three Stooges you just mentioned, it doesn't take much, I think, to really get the best of them. David, let me ask you this, because I piss off a lot of conservatives, former classmates from grad school in general, when I have this theory. I want to pick your brain about this before I let you go. I've already come to the realization that I expect Joe Biden to get reelected next year. And I'll finish let me explain. I just think that as a conservative, and again, as someone who probably votes more Republican than anything, I'm more concerned with making sure that Republicans can keep the House, maybe flip the Senate. It's only a 1 or 2 seat majority, maybe that's needed. I'm coming to the reality, and I'm at peace with the reality that Joe Biden's gonna get reelected, because I just think that there's this Trump exhaustion, David, that exists in states that he won in 2016 that he's not gonna have the luxury of next year. And for the most part, regardless of indictments or whatever, convictions possibly, he'll be the Republican nominee. And I know there's a lot of disenchantment about Joe Biden, inflation, listen, interest rates. It's impossible to buy a home now, gas prices, whatever. I'm almost come to the realization, I think Biden's going to get reelected because the Trump exhaustion is just way too much to overcome. That's why, for me, keeping the House is important. Trying to win the Senate is important because, hey, if we can not allow Joe Biden to have any more judicial picks, especially in the Supreme Court, for me, who is more of a constructionist fan and likes this constructionist majority, I don't want Joe Biden to get more picks at the Supreme Court. I like these court decisions. I like the Dobbs decision. I like the Second Amendment decision. Other decisions that come down the pike because of nominees that President Trump put in there. I just don't see President Trump being able to get reelected because that exhaustion factor in states like Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, it's just too much to overcome. I hope I'm wrong, but Joe Biden, I just see being reelected because of the exhaustion factor. David, I want to pick your thoughts on my theory here.
Yeah, like I said earlier, you got to know what you don't know, and I spend so much time looking at township committee and fire commissioner and school board races in New Jersey that I only know what I watch on television about Pennsylvania and Michigan and Iowa and Wisconsin and other swing states. There are people who are becoming realists and saying, I'd rather have the Senate and the House, and we'll worry about getting the White House back in 4 years. One of the things that those people ought to be concerned about is, and I say this gender neutral, that in a general gender neutral way, but that's fine as long as you have men and women in the Senate and the House with testicles who are able to stand up and fight for their beliefs and not make a deal, not make too many deals that they go against what their own constituencies believe they were getting when they voted for people. I can tell you in New Jersey, one of the things that I hear over and over and over is, if Republicans are in control of the federal government, it's going to be good for Democrats going into the 2025 election. Yeah. And if Joe Biden is still the president, then New Jersey's governorship is in play. So, I say this, I'm not a member of a political party anymore. It's been a number of years since I was, I try not to, I voice, as I have on this show, I'm doing real talk on process issues, but I don't talk about where, it's not that I don't have my own beliefs. It's not that I don't have feelings about these issues, but I'm so sick and tired of hearing reporters talk about what they feel on public policy. I do have strong views on process and about transparency and about, the way elections are held. And I'm going to continue to do that. I think what you have to really do is look at, you got to take one election at a time and see where it's going to go. And, look, the best thing that anybody can hope for, and I say this knowing that some people are going to say I'm full of crap. Some people are going to say that I'm just too big a nerd, but the best thing that parties can do is nominate their very best and their brightest up and down the line, whether it's for local office all the way up to the presidency of the United States. Nominate good people, good, decent people, and then let the voters decide who they want from there.
Well said there. David, listen, when it comes to breaking news, I have to tell you, I don't know who sleeps less, Brian Stack or David Wildstein. I think you guys are like neck and neck there because, you're always publishing, you're breaking news better than anybody else. And, again, it's a testament to your dedication. Also, too, let me give credit to the staff, Joey Fox, and all the great people you have at the New Jersey Globe.
You're a great team. Kevin Sanders, everybody.
Yeah, they're working tirelessly, producing results, giving great scoops all the time. David, again, we could talk for 4 hours and still not get through everything, but I appreciate your time. Try to get some sleep Try to get some
I'm
sleep.
gonna try. I gotta tell you, Fernando, I didn't go to sleep Tuesday night, and I'm 62, so it's not as easy pulling an all-nighter as it used to be for me. I didn't go to sleep because I think the very least that my readers can expect when they wake up on Wednesday morning is to know who won and lost elections. I'm not the Star Ledger or the Bergen Record, or that puts out a print newspaper full of legal ads taking subsidies, by the way. I'm raising the red cape in front of Fernando Uribe again, but I felt it this week, and then by Sunday I slept till 11 o'clock to be woken by my father, who said, "Why are you still in bed? Why are how can you be asleep at 11 o'clock?" So you just, no matter how old you get, you still you still have to answer to some people.
But David, again, I appreciate your insight, and always we have great conversations, and most importantly, I appreciate your faith in this show, and I appreciate the respect that you give me. And because again, my brand of journalism isn't for everybody. People say, well, I'm not a journalist because I do opinion stuff, and that's not journalism. I think that technology, to your point, has allowed us to evolve in the way we share information, the way we get information, podcasting, journalism. However, listen, we're all working towards getting information out, and nobody does it better than you with the New Jersey Globe.
Well,
so
thanks.
I appreciate your respect, and I appreciate you coming on, David. Folks, he is David Wildstein, the editor of the New Jersey Globe. Join us here on Real Talk. David, if I don't talk to you again, have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
You too. Thank you.
And we'll talk to you soon.
And I'll make you this deal, Fernando. You stay true to yourself, and you do exactly what you've been doing. I'm going to do the same thing, and together we will continue to piss people off up and down New Jersey. How's that?
Love it. I love it.
Right.
David, have a great holiday, brother. Stay well.
Thanks, Fernando.
Take care.
Bye.
Folks, great episode there. Really going into overtime here, folks, here, as it's about 8:40 on the East Coast. We appreciate you, again, still tuning in here to Real Talk via Jersey First TV. Again, great guest tonight. Obviously, the first half of the main event was Joe Amditis, the assistant director for the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State University. And certainly, ladies and gentlemen, the second half of tonight's double main event, the distinguished editor of the New Jersey Globe, David Wildstein, joined us here. Again, a lot to break down: races, the state of journalism, all that and much more. Folks, we did that tonight with my two outstanding guests, and I really, really appreciate their time, as I know it is very valuable. Well, folks, before I let you go, it's time, you all know, for final thoughts. And folks, I got to tell you, last week, two organizations really irritated me for different reasons. And the first one that really comes to mind, folks, again, for those of you that went to Atlantic City and endured that woke fest, well, folks, you can always rely on the NJEA to peddle all their woke nonsense as much as possible. Again, using all your membership dues to teachers, administrators, principals, teacher aides, whatever. Good to know the NJEA is using your membership dues for something constructive, right? You would think maybe for, I don't know, workshops that mean something. But no, ladies and gentlemen, you can always rely on the NJEA, of course, to peddle all of the woke nonsense behind me, of course, Drag Queen Story Time, and all the other, I guess, literature that they made available to its members. And folks, I got to tell you, and I will keep being a champion for cultural war issues on this show because I'm the only journalist doing that. Okay. While we have, let's be honest, clowns and propagandists masquerading as journalists, we all know who they are. Tom Moran, David Cruz. Oh, David, maybe I'll do the show in Spanish, and then that'll really freak you out because that means you'd have to get Google Translate to translate what I'm saying because como tú no hablas español, tú no me vas a entender. So probably I might do that in a future episode of you here on the show because I know you tune in anyway, even though you won't admit it. But folks, whether it's Tom Moran, Mike Kelly, other propaganda, Alan Steinberg, Jay Lasser, all the clowns that we know exist in New Jersey media, right? You would think that talking about issues like this would matter, but folks, when it comes to, let's be fair, is there a more reprehensible and irresponsible expenditure of membership dues for a union in New Jersey than the NJEA, right? Peddling this nonsense. You would think that teachers, administrators who work hard all year long would want to go to Atlantic City, enjoy themselves, maybe hit the casinos, hit some workshops, hit a spa. Yeah, sure. there's a lot of professional development workshops to hit. But do you think nonsense like this is what the NGA should be peddling? And shame on Sean Spiller, the president of the NJEA. I mean, really, tables on, why Islam? Yeah, no thanks. I have no desire to learn anything about Islam. And I don't really care how that sounds. It's the truth, folks. I think we live in a climate where, let's be fair, is it okay, right? Where the NJEA will be the first sort of public union to talk about the separation of church and state. We can't have, Christianity in our public schools, but sure, let's indoctrinate people at the NGA conference in Atlantic City and make sure we have a whole table of materials to shove Islam down your throats. Yeah, no thanks. I have no desire to learn about Islam. Never did and never will. But yeah, don't tell it to the NGA where they're more than happy, right? In a climate that we're living in, folks, right, where a country like Israel is being attacked, right, and we see pro-Palestinian demonstrators and marchers going into New York City, Washington, D.C., right, desecrating monuments, tearing down American flags during Veterans Day weekend, no less, right? Yes, these are the people we want, championing the causes of justice and equality, right? Didn't we hear that nonsense during the summer of 2020, during the BLM riots and the looting and everything else and the destruction of public and private property, right? What's the difference now here in the United States with pro-Palestinian sympathizers, right? But in Atlantic City, the NJEA convention, sure. Why not just, since we can't talk about Christianity in our public schools or Judaism in our public schools, but sure, let's push Islam down the throats of our teachers and administrators and our students. Sure, that's a good idea because, yeah, that might not have any catastrophic effects in the future. Okay. Nice job there by the NJEA. And of course, folks, I mean, really, drag queen story time? Really? Do I need to see these two derelicts and people with, let's be honest, we're mentally ill on stage at the NGA giving a lecture or a presentation to teachers, administrators, clerks, whatever? Really, is this what we want at our NGA convention in Atlantic City? Mentally ill people on a stage espousing the nonsense about drag queen story time, gender identity, making books of it. Folks, and again, I can't publish the images on this show, but just do a quick Google search and look up great organizations like Moms for Liberty or the New Jersey Project or others, or Gays Against Groomers, that will tell you conclusively the books that they made available for purchase at the NGA convention. It's disgusting. It's absolutely abhorrent, and it's really nauseating. But what else do you expect from the NGEA, where, let's be fair, their leadership and their president love pushing this woke nonsense every single day? Folks, I'm just glad I don't pay membership dues to that union because, quite frankly, the NGA, you should be ashamed of yourselves. You should be ashamed of yourselves and all the woke nonsense that you peddle every single year during this convention. And let's be honest, that you peddle every single day on your social media, and of course, what you peddle with the executive board and trying to make sure that schools acquiesce to your woke agenda. You should be ashamed of yourselves. I'll tell you right now, folks, I am so grateful that not a nickel of any membership dues of mine or others that I know go to the NJEA, because quite frankly, it's a disgusting public union here in New Jersey. And I'll stand on the hill and I'll take the Pepsi challenge on that. And for anyone that wants to challenge me on it, I'm more than happy to answer the call. Speaking of another organization that really pisses me off last week, it wasn't just the NGEA, but folks, it was, of course, again, you always rely on the Union of Dirty Books and Drag Queens as they continue to fist New Jersey. Yes, folks, nobody does fisting better in New Jersey than the NJEA. But another organization that really pissed me off last week, folks, was the New Jersey Republican Party. In a climate where we know that the gas tax is still there, a potential hike on tolls is coming, where the state budget is getting fatter than Victoria's Secret models that are out there, peddling lingerie lately in their ads, right? That many far-left Democrats in Trenton, whether it's the emperor himself, Governor Murphy, or Senate President Scutari or Assembly Speaker Coughlin, they've never met a tax that they don't like. You would think this is a climate where Republicans could win some state Senate seats and state Assembly seats. And what happened was the outright opposite, right? And again, credit David Wildstein earlier today, or maybe it's not fair to pile on Chairman Bob Hugin. Really, I think more of the responsibility should be and more of the scoring should be directed at county committees for maybe not vetting better candidates and having a better message. I get all that. But folks, he's the state chairman. You're in charge, Bob. You have to oversee these county committees. They're not doing a good job. And in a year where Republicans want to brag about making gains in 2021 and only flipping one congressional district in 2022, right? Come 2023, it was an outright disaster. And just like I like to put scoring on Brian Cashman with the New York Yankees, and just like I like to put scoring on Jerry Jones with my Dallas Cowboys, or Jeannie Buss with my Los Angeles Lakers, at some point you have to hold management and ownership or the top of the food chain accountable. And here in New Jersey, for Republicans, conservatives, and everywhere else, we have to hold Bob Hugin accountable. And of course, word got back to me that somehow, who am I to criticize the Republican Party in New Jersey? How dare I criticize Chairman Bob Hugin? Who am I? I'll tell you who the hell I am. Okay, I'm Fernando Uribe. And you know who I am, folks? I'm the guy that, guess what, produces this traffic every month. Okay, so when people want to go online and say, well, who the F is Fernando Uribe to criticize Republicans, or who the F is Fernando Uribe to criticize what the NJGOP is doing, you know who I am? I'm this mother effer that is putting up this traffic every single month. All organic, nothing boosted, unlike Mickey Mouse journalists or Mickey Mouse activists with the little Mickey Mouse shows with 100 views, 200 views, 300, 500 views. Folks, I'm doing tens of thousands of views a month. So if anyone's going to have the political capital and the intellectual honesty and the philosophical consistency to talk about what Republicans are doing wrong, it's yours truly. I can talk all I want because of the traffic I produce, because people listen to me. So you know what? I'm going to say it right now. I'm going to say it for everybody in the room. To Bob Hugin and to the New Jersey Republican Party, you should be ashamed of yourselves. You lost plenty of seats you could have won. I don't know what it is you need to do. I'm not looking for a job. I'm not looking to be an operative. I'm not looking to be state chair. But you need to look in the mirror and get back to the drawing board. You start to hire operatives out of New York, out of DC or something, because the operatives in New Jersey are not working. You're losing races. And you're going to continue to lose races because you don't embrace vote by mail, which isn't going anywhere. You're not embracing early voting, and you're not embracing the reality of getting good candidates. And that's why you continue to take L's. And folks, I don't know about you as a conservative. There were races in Central and South Jersey that Republicans could have won. Now, whether or not you raise money and whether or not you're putting money into races, I don't know, Bob, but you need to get to work. And quite frankly, I don't think you should be chair anymore. I think you need to step down. And if Republicans have any hope in 2025 of capturing the governor's office and trying to win some seats in the state assembly and state senate, I hate to break it to you, and I don't really care how this sounds, Bob Hugin cannot be the state chair. The body of work isn't there, and I hate to break it to you. You've taken enough L's, Bob, in the last 2 years where, quite frankly, you take enough L's as a general manager of a sports team or you're the owner or whatever. Changes need to come. If Jack Chiarelli's the nominee in 2025, I'm going to tell you right now, folks, Jack's not going to win. Not with Bob Hugin as chair. I'll say this right now. Look at the model of success with someone like Mike Testa. That state senator being the chairman of the Cumberland County Republican Party, guess what? Swept last Tuesday. That's a chairman who gets it. Yeah, sure, he gets it at a micro level. Okay. But at the macro, folks, what's the harm? What's the harm of getting someone like State Senator Michael Testa as the next chairman of the New Jersey Republican Party? Can he do any worse? I don't think so. Folks, I hate to break it to you. I don't claim to have all the answers, but for the most part, I tend to most of the time. And right now, ladies and gentlemen, the NJGOP needs fresh faces, a fresh perspective, fresh messaging. And I hate to break it to you, it's not coming with State Chairman Bob Hugin. Bob, nothing personal. You're a nice guy. I've met you. I've interacted with you. You're a nice guy. Listen, believe me, I'd love to have dinner with you, and we can have a couple of beers and chuckle and BS. But as chairman of the New Jersey Republican Party, I'm sorry, Bob. You know what? I give grades out. This one's not getting a good grade from me. You should step down gracefully and let someone else take the reins, because quite frankly, you're not embracing vote by mail. You're not embracing early voting, and you're sure as hell not embracing the necessity of vetting good candidates. We saw it in LD11, and we saw it in plenty of other districts. And this is why Republicans will continue to take L's. It's not because of messaging or anything else. We saw that messaging works in local races, especially in Board of Ed races. But for whatever reason, the messaging at the state level doesn't resonate. And that falls on you, Bob. Not trying to be mean, not trying to be a bully here, but bro, step down. Republicans deserve better in 2024, and they deserve better in 2025. And that's our show for this week. Once again, I want to thank Joe Amditis, the assistant director for the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State University, and David Wildstein, the editor for the New Jersey Globe, my guest tonight, folks. Again, always remember, check out all of our social media. Make sure you like us on Facebook. Of course, follow us on Instagram and Twitter, and so wherever you get your podcasts at Spotify or SoundCloud. Download Jersey First, and all our fresh new content comes at you every single week. And folks, again, we're always doing our part to educate and empower the masses here in the state of New Jersey. And I always say it, and I'll repeat it again, how proud I am to be on the dream team of Garden State Media, folks, here in the state of New Jersey. It's Jersey First TV. Of course, brand new episodes of the Nader Narrative premiere every Thursday, hosted by the incredible Elizabeth Nader. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, brand new episodes of Bridging the Gap with AJ Malillo and Stephen Rumbollo, premiere also on Thursday. And of course, brand new episodes of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe, premiere every Monday night right here on Jersey First TV. Of course, check local listings 4 times specifically, and also on social media. Folks, we're doing our part to bring you engaging dialogue, educational content, and of course, entertaining conversations every single week here on Jersey First TV. And always remember, ladies and gentlemen, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always real talk right here with Jersey First TV. I am New Jersey's premier award-winning journalist. I know that's hard for some people to process, but it's true. Top 50 Latino, as voted on by the United States Latino Affairs Initiative. Certainly the weapon of mass disruption in Garden State media. As you can tell, folks, the traffic will tell you the people's choice and the people's voice. And of course, we all know the most handsome face that runs the place. It's me, Fernando Uribe, folks, saying have a great rest of your Monday. I'll see you at the League of Municipalities. For all the Fernando Uribe fans, come up and say hi. Love to say hi to you and talk with you. And for all the haters, make sure you come up and say hi too. I love to see you as well. Folks, I'll see you at the League of Municipalities this week. Enjoy the rest of your week here in the state of New Jersey. About the Cowboys, nice little win here as we go to Carolina this weekend. And don't worry, we'll get those disgusting birds in Dallas in December. Don't you worry about that. Hopefully, we don't have to benefit from all those calls you get at home in Philadelphia like the Eagles always do. Plenty of football still remains in this NFL season. So let's go Cowboys. Folks, again, can't be good, be bad, baby. We'll see you next week here on Real Talk via Jersey First TV. And thanks for stopping by.